"You'll regret this," the Chinese girl said when the rancher paid $2 for her at the auction. The sun scorched Scorpion Creek until every board, every stone seemed ready to burst into flame. At the center of town, a young Chinese woman stood on the auction platform, wrists bound tight, her skin bruised beneath the noon glare, blood crusted at the corner of her mouth. She wore the tattered remains of a simple tunic and trousers, caked with the dust of a long, cruel journey. Yet her stare remained unbroken, cold, bright, and proud. Men gathered around, their laughter as dry as the wind. "Won't last a week on a ranch," one spat. "Sell her for a cigar." "It's more than she's worth," another barked. Coins clinked. A half-empty bottle was waved as a bid. The trafficker grinned, his teeth yellowed. "She's wild, but still breathing. Who will start?" Then a single voice, steady and low, broke through the noise. $2. The square fell silent. $2 was barely the price of a new pair of boots, or one night's drink at the saloon. The crowd roared with laughter at the foolishness. Through the dust stepped Cole Donovan, a local rancher, his coat streaked with grime, his eyes unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. He laid 2 silver coins on the table. "Not buying her," he said. "Just buying your mercy." He cut the ropes. The woman met his gaze. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice a low rasp. "I won't obey you." "I've regretted worse," he answered. "Not today." The sun sank slow over Scorpion Creek, leaving the town wrapped in a copper haze. The wind carried the smell of hot dust and whiskey, the two things that kept men alive here or killed them faster. Saloons leaned against one another like drunks. Horses stamped in the dirt street, restless under the heat that never quite faded after dark. At the far edge of town stood a modest ranch house with a barn that had seen better days. Cole Donovan lived alone, a man of few words and fewer friends. He was broad-shouldered with hands calloused and scarred from years of hard labor. The right side of his neck bore an old burn, twisted and pale, a souvenir from the war. He never spoke of it. People said he'd once been a soldier, a sergeant under Corbin Thorne before the army disbanded and men scattered like ash. Now, Thorne ran freight wagons and trade goods, though everyone knew half of what he sold, breathed, and bled. That afternoon, when Cole paid $2 silver for the Chinese girl, folks in Scorpion Creek couldn't stop laughing. The fool paid for trouble, they said at the saloon. She'll cut his throat by dawn, but Cole didn't hear them. Or maybe he did and chose to let the noise pass like wind through tin. The girl sat outside his small porch now, wrapped in a blanket he'd left by the door. Her name was Mai, he learned only because she muttered it once, half asleep, as if reminding herself who she was. Her wrists were raw from the ropes, the marks would scar. He brought her a tin cup of water, said nothing, and went to check on his horses. The place smelled of hay, leather, and sweat. Every movement he made was measured, deliberate, like a man performing a penance. He didn't look at her, not until she spoke. "Why did you do it?" He kept mending a piece of tack. "Because someone had to." She gave a dry laugh that held no mirth. "You think $2 buys back what they took?" The awl in his hand paused mid-stitch. The lantern flame flickered. "No," he said quietly. "But it stops one more wound from being made." As dusk deepened, the first howl of wind came down from the desert. Cole stepped outside to latch the barn door and caught the faintest whiff of smoke. Not the clean kind from his chimney. This was wild, greasy, wrong. He turned toward the corral. Fire tore through the haystack and the stalls in a breath. The horses screamed. He ran for the buckets, shouting for help that wouldn't come. Scorpion Creek watched from porches and windows, the same way it had watched the girls' auction, amused, detached, safe in its cruelty. By the time the flames died, the barn was a black skeleton against the night. Cole stood among the ashes, the heat licking at his boots. Behind him, Mai's voice came soft but steady. "I know who did this." He turned. She was staring into the smoke, her eyes reflecting the fire. "It's Thorne," she said. "The one who bought and sold us." The one you once rode with. The night fell heavy between them, and for the first time in years, Cole Donovan felt the weight of a past he had tried to bury rising again from the flames. They left Scorpion Creek before dawn. The smoke from the burnt barn still clung to the wind like a curse. Cole rode ahead, the reins loose in one hand, a rifle slung across his saddle. Behind him, Mai followed on a mare he'd barely managed to save from the fire. She rode straight-backed, silent, a strip of cloth covering the raw wound on her wrist. Neither spoke for miles. The land spread endless around them, brittle mesquite, dry gullies, and far-off ridges blurred by heat. Somewhere behind those ridges lay Diablo Basin, where Cole meant to start again, or maybe finish what he should have long ago. When the sun climbed higher, Mai broke the silence. "You didn't have to bring me." "I didn't," he said without turning. "You followed." Her voice was sharp, like flint striking stone. "You think I trust you?" "I don't need you to." The horse's hooves thudded over dry earth. For a while, there was only wind and the faint creak of leather. Then she spoke again. "Corbin Thorne. He promised my village passage and work. He sold my people into mines and camps." Cole's shoulders stiffened, but he said nothing. "I saw his face that night," she went on, "and the soldiers who followed him, her eyes fixed on his back. Were you one of them?" He didn't answer. The silence was louder than a confession. By noon, they reached the rim of a canyon where the trail split into two narrow passes. Cole dismounted, studying the tracks in the dust. "We'll take the northern route. Less open ground. More hiding places," she said. "For them or for you?" He looked at her then, really looked. The dirt on her cheeks couldn't hide the fierce steadiness in her eyes. "You'll live longer if you stop thinking everyone's your enemy." "Everyone is," she replied and nudged her horse past him. That night, they made camp beneath a cluster of dead cottonwoods. The sky above was clear, black as coal dust, pricked with hard stars. Cole gathered wood in silence while Mai crouched nearby, sharpening a piece of scrap metal into a crude blade. When sparks rose from his flint, she flinched. He noticed. "You've seen too many fires." She glared. "So have you." Neither spoke after that. The wind moaned through the branches, carrying the smell of ash and old ghosts. Before dawn, the sound of hooves woke them both. Cole reached for his rifle, motioning for her to stay down, but she was already moving, silent as a shadow. From the ridge above, two riders appeared, torches flickering. Thorne's men. Cole fired once, hitting a torch, not a man. The flames dropped, scattering sparks. The riders bolted into the dark, shouting curses. When the last echo faded, Cole leaned against a boulder, his breath ragged. Blood darkened his sleeve. "You're hit," Mai said, kneeling beside him. "It's nothing." "Don't lie." She tore a strip from her tunic, pressing it to the wound. Her fingers were firm, quick, unafraid. "Hold still." The sharp, clean scent of a crushed herb filled the air. She'd found it growing between the rocks to stop the bleeding. His voice came low, strained. "You've done this before." "For others," she said. "Not for men like you." He tried to speak again, but his words tangled into a groan. Fever climbed fast. She laid him down near the fire, watching his face twist in pain. Then, in the half-light, he muttered through clenched teeth words she wasn't meant to hear. "I burned it. The camp. Children were inside." She froze. The world seemed to fall silent except for his ragged breathing. By morning, the fever had broken. He opened his eyes to find her sitting a few feet away, the knife across her knees, staring at the horizon. "You heard?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "I did." "Then why am I still breathing?" Her voice was steady, almost weary. "Because mercy isn't obedience. And hate doesn't feed the thirsty." He said nothing more. The desert wind moved between them, hot, dry, and alive. That day, when they rode on, she no longer followed 10 paces behind. She rode beside him. The trail carried them deeper into Diablo Basin, where the land shimmered like hammered copper beneath the heat. Days blurred together, dusk by daylight, cold by night. Yet between the stretches of silence, something fragile began to form. An unspoken rhythm. A quiet endurance shared by two people who had run out of places to hide. Robert rarely spoke unless he needed to. He rode with a careful, controlled precision, a man afraid of sudden things. Mai moved differently, alert and fluid, her eyes scanning the horizon like a hawk. One morning, while he mended a broken rein, she crouched nearby, watching his hands. "You work like you're praying," she said. He didn't glance up. "Maybe I am." "To who?" He paused. Not sure he listens anymore. She smiled faintly, not in mockery, but in recognition. "Then you understand the gods I know." Their voices faded into the hum of the desert. The world around them was vast but no longer empty. At dusk, they reached a dry arroyo where faint water trickled beneath the sand. Cole dug a shallow pit, coaxing out a slow seep of brown water. Mai crouched beside him, letting the cool mud soothe her wrists. "You could have left me," she said suddenly. "I tried," he admitted. "Then why didn't you?" He met her gaze, steady and tired. "Because when you look at me, I see everything I ran from." She studied him for a long moment, then turned away. "That's not a good reason." "It's the truth," he said. 2 days later, they crossed a stretch of salt flats that glowed white under the sun. Cole's sleeve was stiff with dried blood, his wound healing slowly. Mai insisted on cleaning it each night, her hand steady even when his breath hissed through his teeth. "Your people taught you this?" he asked once. "Yes," she said. "Before they were scattered." He watched her wrap the bandage with careful precision. "You were a healer." Her eyes flickered. "I was a daughter, that was all," she said. By the 4th night, they reached the foothills of the Serpent Spine Mountains. The air was cooler here, the rocks turning black and jagged under the moonlight. Cole slowed his horse as they approached the broken ruins of an old railroad camp. The crumbled shacks and rusted tracks still bore the insignia of the company he'd once served as a guard for. He stopped, staring at the collapsed mess hall. "I knew this place," Mai's voice was low. "The men who raided my settlement wore that same mark." He said nothing, only dismounted and walked to the base of a shattered signal post. His hand brushed a length of rusted chain. The sound it made was hollow, like the echo of a past that refused to die. She watched him for a long while. Then asked, "Why did you follow orders like that?" He didn't turn. "Because I was too young to know what cowardice looked like." "And now?" "Now I know it by name." Their eyes met across the ruins, heavy with truths neither could soften. They made camp in a narrow ravine. The firelight flickered over their faces, one weathered, one scarred by survival. "Do you ever sleep?" Cole asked. Mai sat near the edge of the firelight, polishing a small, smooth piece of jade tied to a leather cord. "When the fire burns low, that's when the dead come," she said. He looked up. "Then maybe they still need something from us." A few minutes later, she held out the jade token. "My father gave this to me before they took me." Cole stared at the carving, then at her. "Keep it." "I don't need reminders," she said. He picked it up anyway and handed it back. "Reminders keep you human." She took it, not to argue, but because his voice carried the same exhaustion she felt in her bones. When dawn broke, they prepared to leave. Mai glanced toward him. "You'll find him soon," she said. Thorn, she nodded. "And when you do, what?" He hesitated. "Maybe I'll see if redemption has a face." She studied him as if weighing the man against the words. "If it does, it's never the one we expect." They rode on without speaking. The sun climbed, the land widened, and the distance between them finally began to feel less like a wall and more like a road. The path through the Serpent Spine twisted like a scar. By the time they reached the canyon mouth, the light had turned copper. Cole crouched, touching the dirt. Boot prints. Fresh. "They're close," he said. A sudden echo of voices. 4 riders appeared from behind a ridge, rifles glinting. "Thorne's men." Cole pulled his gun. "Stay behind the rocks." Mai ignored him. She drew her sharpened blade, holding it low and ready. The first man charged. Cole fired, hitting his shoulder, sending him tumbling. The others fired back, bullets sparking against stone. "Shoot to kill," she shouted. He reloaded calmly. "I'm done killing her." Bullet grazed his thigh. He stumbled, rolling behind a boulder. Mai darted out, a blur of motion, distracting one man while Cole fired again, hitting the rifle out of another's hand. "You'll die trying to be a saint," she hissed, dropping beside him. He looked at her, sweat running down his neck. "Better that than die as what I was." They fought until the canyon fell silent. 2 men lay still, another had fled. Cole leaned against the rock, breathing hard. "You could have finished them," Mai said. He shook his head. "You think blood answers blood?" "I thought so, too." Until the day I watched it dry for a moment, anger flickered in her eyes. But beneath it was something else, a recognition of the same torment that lived in her. By nightfall, they reached an abandoned trading post. Inside, on a dusty shelf, Mai found a bundle wrapped in cloth. She unrolled it and froze. Inside lay a silver bracelet, tarnished but unmistakable, carved with a delicate lotus blossom. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. Cole stepped closer. "That's yours?" Her throat tightened. "It was my mother's," he nodded. "Then take it." She did. And for the first time since he'd met her, her eyes glistened. "Why would you do this?" "Because you were meant to have it," he said simply. "Not men like Thorne." "Not me." She turned the bracelet in her hand. "You think this forgives you?" He shook his head slowly. "No. But maybe it lets me remember without lying." The following evening, Cole and Mai reached the edge of Big Bend territory. Below, hidden among the boulders, smoke rose from a cluster of shacks. Thorne's new stronghold. "He's down there," Mai watched in silence, her jaw tight. "And 6 men with him," Cole added. She gripped her knife. "Then we end it tonight." He caught her wrist. "No. Not like this." Her eyes flared. "You'd let him live." "I'd let you live," he said, his voice rough. "Killing him won't free you from him. It never does." She pulled away, trembling. "He took my father. Sold my mother, my brother." "I know," Cole said. "And I helped him once. But if you spill his blood, you'll carry his shadow." "I've carried it long enough." She looked at him then, truly looked, seeing not the man who'd once served Thorne, but the one who'd chosen to face him now. The firelight caught the silver bracelet on her wrist. Her hand lowered. "Then we finish this your way." The storm broke over Big Bend just before midnight. Through the blur of lightning, they moved like shadows toward Thorne's camp. A half-collapsed shack stood at the river's edge, lamplight leaking through its cracks. Inside, Thorne's rasping laugh rose above the storm. They slipped past 2 guards, silencing them without a sound. Cole kicked the door open. Thorne looked up, eyes narrowing. "Well, hell. Cole Donovan. Thought you'd burned up with your conscience. You should have stayed dead to me, Corbin." Thorne laughed. "And miss this? You always were the soft 1-inch." He lifted a revolver from the table. "Guess you came to fix that." Mai emerged from the shadows. The sight of her made Thorne freeze, then smirk. "The little stray lives. I remember the ships, the look in your father's eyes." Mai's hand went to her knife. "Don't." Cole's voice was sharp. "She burned them alive," Thorne sneered at Cole. "And you think one good deed makes you clean?" The room pulsed with thunder. From outside, a gunshot cracked. One of Thorne's own men, panicked, had fired through the doorway. Chaos erupted. Robert lunged, shoving Mai aside as a bullet ripped through the wall. The lamp toppled, flames spilling across the floor. Thorn turned to run, but one of his men, frightened and greedy, raised his gun. "The gold's mine, old man." The shot hit Thorn square in the chest. He fell backward, crashing into the burning table. The others fled into the storm. Mai stood over the dying man. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she sheathed her knife. "I won't let you take more of me," she whispered. Cole watched the flames curl around the shack. He found the ledger, a small, water-stained book beside Thorn's hand. On one page, in a faded scrawl, he saw a name, and taken to Santa Fe mission. He turned to Mai. "Your mother." She looked at the words, her expression unreadable. "She's alive." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe this is the only proof she ever lived." Mai took the book gently. "Then we follow this trail." Cole nodded. "We will." Lightning split the sky as he pulled her from the collapsing shack, and they ran into the rain together. The road north wound through weeks of silence and sky. The desert slowly gave way to pine and thin mountain air. The mission appeared one morning through a curtain of fog. An old woman tended a small garden, humming to herself. When Mai called out, the woman turned slowly. Her hair was silver white, her face lined but strong. One eye was clouded with blindness, but the other fixed sharply on the girl approaching. A heartbeat passed. Then the woman dropped her shears. "Mai?" The name trembled out of her, a prayer forgotten too long. Mai stopped, her throat too tight to speak. She nodded once. The woman's hands rose, weathered and shaking, as they found her daughter's face. "They said none survived. But I knew. I knew the son does not die." Mai fell into her mother's arms, silent tears cutting paths through the dust on her skin. Cole turned away, giving them their privacy. Later, and spoke of years lost, of being sold to missionaries. "And your brother?" Mai asked. An's lips trembled. "He was taken east. Texas," they said. "A boy named Sean." "Then he's still somewhere under the same sky," Mai whispered. Cole stood in the doorway. He stepped forward, holding out the ledger. "It's yours now." Mai took it. "You found what you came for," she said. "Forgiveness." He shook his head. "Not forgiveness. Just the courage to live without it." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then maybe that's what forgiveness really is." Days passed. Cole helped mend the mission's fence and forged new hinges for the chapel door, finding peace in the rhythm of his work. 1 week later, Mai stood beside the river that ran behind the mission. She watched Cole hammering the final nail into a new horseshoe, sparks flying. She crossed the river stones toward him. "Do you remember what I said in Scorpion Creek?" she asked. "That I'd regret buying you," he said with a crooked smile. "And that I'd never obey you." He looked up. "You haven't." She reached into her satchel, pulled out 2 silver coins, tarnished, their edges worn smooth, and set them on his anvil. "Then I'm paying you back." He frowned. "For what?" "For the fire you stopped. For the road you shared. For not asking me to be anything but myself." He touched 1 coin, then her hand. "You don't owe me." "I know," she said softly. "That's why it matters." The sky that evening burned the color of iron and blood. They stood together on a ridge, the scent of pine and forged smoke mixing in the air. "When people see scars, they think of pain," she said, looking toward the horizon. "But the land has them, too, and it still breathes." He nodded, following her gaze. "Scars mean it lived." She turned to him, a rare, small smile on her lips. "Then so do we." The sun slipped behind the mountains, leaving the sky streaked with fire. In its reflection on the river below, the world seemed to burn again, but this time it was a gentle, cleansing flame. And for the first time since Scorpion Creek, both of them let it burn.